Well, good morning. Welcome to 419 Church. My name is Patrick. So glad to see you here this morning as we continue with our series, You're Not the Boss of Me. Last year, I was at a pastor's conference, and we were sitting around the table one day at lunch, and I was sitting around with a group of people who I didn't really know. Most of them I had just met. And the conversation is happening, and then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but the conversations then started pairing off. A couple people started talking here, and a couple people there, and so I ended up talking to this guy sitting next to me, and he began to tell me about his church. He's got a church in Florida, and they're also a church plant, and they're a few years ahead of us. And he was just telling me about some things they were going through and how they were navigating some things, and then I started telling him about us and where we were and the things that were going on here. And as I did that, I mentioned that we have secured a piece of land just down the road that one day we hope to build a building on. And as I shared that with him, he just looked at me and he says, "I'm happy for you, but I'm so jealous." And the look on my face was one where I was not expecting him to say that, and my face said a lot in terms of communicating to him that I was shocked and surprised that he would say that to me. I mean, who is that honest with a person you just met, right? And so that threw me a little bit. Anyway, I kind of recovered, and he kind of explained why he had said that. And so we carried on the conversation, and then later on, I was reflecting on our time at lunch and that particular conversation. And as I reflected on that, I realized that from time to time, there are thoughts that come into my head where I am jealous of other churches who have their own building. And what am I doing with those thoughts? What am I doing when those thoughts creep into my head? And what do I do with that? Now, I don't know if you can relate to that at all, if you have thoughts ever of jealousy or envy or those kinds of things, if any of those thoughts ever creep into your head. But the reality is that most of us actually do. If you're like most people, most of us have thoughts from time to time. I'm not saying it's all the time, but from time to time, most of us have thoughts where we're jealous or envious of other people and the things they've achieved or the things they have or things that they've experienced. And for most of us, we have these ideas that, we want to be smart like them, and we want to be pretty like her and skinny like them and rich like her, and we just want all of these things. And as we see other people, we start looking around, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram, or we just know of other people, and we see their lives and we see things that are going on with them and the things they've either accomplished or achieved or the things they've been able to purchase or whatever the case may be. We have these ideas and thoughts that creep into our head from time to time where we're jealous or envious. And then if you're married, it gets worse, because not only do we look at those things for ourselves about we want to be smart and funny and pretty and skinny and all of those things for ourselves, but then as we look at other people, we want our wives to be prettier than his wife, right? And ladies, you want your husband to have as good a job as her husband has, and you want your husband to make as much money as her husband makes. And we have all of these ideas about our spouses because we kind of transfer those things to them. And then if you have kids, it's even worse, because we want our kids to be smart like their kids and behave as well as them. And we want them to be as good at sports as those kids. And we want all of these things. We look for those parents and those parents and those parents who do those things with those kids. And we just want and desire, and we can be jealous and envious of those things as well for our kids. So what do we do with all of those thoughts? What do we do when those thoughts creep into our minds and things? Well, but before we move forward and get into that, I just want us all to get on the same page. And so I want us to talk about jealousy and envy and what those are. And so jealousy, one definition is a feeling of resentment against someone because of that person's rivalry, success, or advantages. And envy is a feeling of discontent or covetousness with regard to another's advantages, success, possessions, etc. So jealousy and envy are really closely related to each other. And so that's what it is. So I wonder if jealousy and envy ever creep into your life, creep into your head. Maybe you're just more mature than me, and maybe you don't deal with that at all. Now, before we move forward, I just want to say this. I am not saying we should never look at other people and be motivated by them. I am not saying that at all. We should absolutely look to people who've achieved a lot and who have done great things, and we should be motivated in a positive way to get better and do better and be better. We should definitely strive for that. And as it relates to us and getting a building of our own, we're trying to do that. We're trying to learn. We're trying to have conversations with other churches who've done similar things to what we're doing and how they've gone from things like this to their own building. We're talking with them and trying to learn how they did it and how they went about those things. But we're trying our best not to allow envy and jealousy to get into our thoughts and to drive our behavior in that way. And so there's a difference there, because there's a difference between when the thoughts of jealousy and envy come into our head. There's a difference between just having the thought and allowing that thought or that emotion to drive your behavior. It drives your behavior when it goes from your head to your heart. And when it gets anchored and lodged in your heart, it can have resentment and discontent. That's where it gets into your heart. You go from envy and jealousy, just a fleeting thought, oh, that would be nice, I wish I had this, to it goes to your heart, and then you have resentment and discontentment, and you have no peace in your life because of that. And then it drives your behavior and affects your behavior with other people and other relationships. And so that's where envy can become a problem. So I wonder if you here today, if there's a relationship that you have that you would say, that relationship, there's a little bit of envy there, maybe there's a little bit of jealousy there in that particular relationship. For you, maybe it's a category. Maybe it's a category around houses. You just look at that house, and you look at all these other people's houses, and you're always just wishing and jealous and envious of other people's houses. But maybe it's not houses for you. Maybe it's somebody else's wardrobe. You just look at all these other people and their wardrobe and what they have to wear, and that's what you're jealous of. Or maybe it's, for you, it's cars. Maybe you just get into cars and having all these nice cars. Maybe it's motorcycles or boats. Or maybe it has to do with your kids, and you're always looking at other people's kids and how amazing they are and well-behaved and what they're accomplishing. Maybe that's for you. Or maybe for you it's not a category. Maybe for you it's a particular person. Maybe that particular person, they had an amazing upbringing and they just have pretty much everything they want and then some, and they just achieve all of these great things, and they're just doing this and this and this, and you just, every time they do something or say something or post something, that little bit of envy and jealousy just kind of rises up within you. Maybe for you, it's just a person. Whatever it is there something in you, some category or some person that there's that jealousy or that envy? Now, for some of you, you're thinking, oh, what's the big deal? Right? I mean, it's just a little jealousy, it's just a little envy. All of us desire to have better things. All of us desire to have bigger things and greater things, and we just desire that. And so it's just a thought in my head. It's not a big deal. Well, it can become a big deal. It can become a big deal when it goes from that fleeting thought in your head to your heart. And when it gets lodged in your heart and anchored in your heart, it can affect the relationships around you. And so there's two big things where jealousy and two big reasons why jealousy and envy are not good for us as we seek to follow Jesus. Now, that's what we do around here. We try to inspire people to follow Jesus around here. And so that's our goal, our mission. That's what we're trying to do. But this actually applies to anyone. This is actually true of anyone, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not. And so the first thing that envy and jealousy does is that it eats you up inside. It just kind of eats you up inside. Solomon was considered the wisest man before Jesus who had ever lived. He said this. He said, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. Envy rots the bones. Envy does something inside you, and it's detrimental to you emotionally and physically and mentally, and it just does all of this stuff in you. And it robs you of joy and peace. And it's the opposite of having peace. It's turmoil within you. He says, but those of us who don't allow that, who don't allow the jealousy and envy to torment us and rile up in us, we can have peace. And the reason why you don't have peace or can't have peace when you have jealousy and envy in you is because you're so focused on the things out there. You're so focused on what you don't have that you cannot appreciate what you do have. And when you cannot appreciate what you do have, there's this angst and turmoil within you, and you're not living a life of peace. That's what Solomon said. So that's the first thing, is that when we have jealousy and envy, not just the fleeting thought, we can't do anything about the thoughts that just pop into our head. But to keep it from going from our head to our heart, if we can do that, that'll help us to live a life of peace. The other thing it does is it helps us to love. Envy actually keeps us from love. Paul, who wrote a significant portion of the New Testament, who traveled all around the Mediterranean rim talking about Jesus, he wrote some different letters to other people and to different churches in the area. And on his first letter to the church at Corinth, he wrote this. He said, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy. In other words, if we're going to be loving toward other people, then we can't have envy and jealousy in our hearts. Because if we have envy and jealousy in our hearts, then there's no way we're going to be able to love those people. And so if we're going to love, and by the way, Paul and Jesus taught that if we're followers of Jesus, then love should characterize who we are. It should come from within us. Everyone else should know that we're followers of Jesus by the way we love other people. And so if we're going to follow Jesus and be the men and women that he is calling us to be and that he's asking us to be and desiring for us to be, if we're to live that out, well, then we can't allow envy and jealousy to go from our heads to our hearts. We can't allow it to get lodged in there and anchored in there and be a part of who we are. Because when we allow that to happen, that keeps us from loving other people. So, how do we do that? How do we go about keeping envy and jealousy just as a fleeting thought and not getting lodged in our hearts? How do we do that? How do we stop envy? Well, the first thing we do is recognize. We've got to recognize when the thought comes into our head. When the thought comes into our head of jealousy and envy and that person or that category or this thing or that thing, we've got to recognize that it's there. And then we've got to tell it, jealousy, you're not the boss of me. Envy, you're not the boss of me. And then we need to think about something else. We need to move on, because if we dwell on that thought of jealousy or dwell on that thought of envy, it's going to make its way from our heads to our hearts. So once we recognize that it's there, instead of dwelling on it and thinking about it and dissecting it and just mulling it over and meditating on it over and over and over, we need to recognize it's there and then think about something else. That's the first step in stopping envy and jealousy from going from our heads to our hearts. The next thing we need to do is celebrate. We need to celebrate other people. Because when we celebrate other people, it's harder for us to be envious of them. It's harder for us to be jealous of them when we're celebrating them. And so when that thought pops into your head about that person, you celebrate them. Oh, you lost 5 pounds? That is great. I'm so glad for you. When your husband got a new job, he got a raise, he deserves it. He worked so hard. Good job. Your kids got straight A's. That's amazing. They must study all the time. You got a new car. I'm so happy for you. That's amazing. See, when we celebrate, it breaks the cycle. It breaks the pattern. It breaks the flow of jealousy and envy that starts in our heads, but celebrating breaks the flow from going from our heads to our hearts. And so if we can celebrate, now I'm not saying be ingenuous. I'm not saying don't mean it. Just say things just to say things. But if you can genuinely celebrate other people's achievements and success and the good things that are happening to them, well, that breaks the flow of jealousy and envy from our heads to our hearts. That's how we stop it. And so if we're going to follow Jesus, if we're going to live the life that he has for us and continuing to take steps toward following him, then this is going to be helpful for us. Now, if you're here today and you're not a follower of Jesus, this is completely optional for you. You can decide whether or not you want to do this. But I think it will be helpful for you. I think it would help you live a life of peace. It would help you to love other people. But for those of us who are followers of Jesus, it is a dangerous, slippery slope. We have those thoughts. Because we all will from time to time have thoughts of jealousy and envy pop into our heads. We need to stop that flow. We need to recognize when they're there. Say to jealousy and envy, hey, you're not the boss. Think about something else. And then to celebrate other people. And when we do that, we'll keep jealousy and envy at bay and keep them from being the boss of us. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your love, your grace, your mercy, your forgiveness. God, I pray for us that you would give us the wisdom to understand when we're feeling jealous and envious. God, then give us the courage to take the steps to stop the flow from our heads to our hearts. That we might live lives pleasing to you. I pray this in Jesus' name.